This podcast is a proud member of the Unidentified Network.
Police in Las Vegas found themselves in the middle of a UFO mystery last month after
To us, big eyes. They have big eyes.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal? Or?
One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious.
What? I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Okay, hang on.
He's right.
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, good. He's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
Mythical Legends Podcast with your host Daniel Barnett.
We're back, guys. We're back with a live podcast. Now, I thought it would be a very, very nice treat for you guys if we did a live stream for you guys. We haven't done one in a while. And I thought it would be really, really nice to kind of show you guys a live podcast. So we have our co-host, and he does a lot of my tech work for me, and he does brilliant posters for me. Let's bring him on. Hey.
So I do brilliant tech work. I do good posters, and I happen to be your dad. So I think I do a lot more things than just posters and tech there, Daniel Barnett.
Yeah, that's probably true. Only a bit more though.
Okay.
So we have no, I haven't. We have 2 people in chat so far, and then we have a good guest, don't we?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, lovely guy. I'm really pleased that we're on this one.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I was on his podcast, I would say October it was, and we had I know exactly who that is. Thank you very, very much, Nan. I thought I was a great host, but okay. So let's bring our guest on and have a wonderful chat this evening. Let's bring on Mr. Kyle Connolly from Encrypted Connections.
What's up, mate? Guys? How are you?
Hey, Kyle. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, guys. Thank you for having me.
You are very, very welcome, mate. I have been itching to get you on this podcast, mate, because we had such a great podcast. I would say October it was.
Yeah, it was around October. It was a great show. I mean, it was wonderful. I still have people commenting about that episode and just speaking to how absolutely wonderful you were as a guest and how impressive you are as a young man.
Thank you very much.
Don't tell him too much, though. It goes to his head.
Oh, stop it!
We'll break him down the rest of the show. That's all he's getting for compliments.
That's fine. I've got to say, Carl, I've got a massive amount of beard hair going on here. Look at this. One day I'll be able to get it just like yours.
I got to trim this thing, man. It's out of control.
So let's jump right in. And let's go with the question. What was your inspiration to the cryptid world?
Man, I think much like a lot of other people, as a kid, I remember going to the local library. It was a very inexpensive thing to do to entertain us as kids for mom. And so I remember going there and I remember opening a book, and in that book, there was a picture of Nessie. And I was just like, as I'm reading it, at first you see a picture and you think, okay, they're talking about a dinosaur. And then as you read it, they're talking about how there's a possibility that this creature exists now in the world. And my imagination just ran wild with that. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. If this is true. I don't know many kids out there that aren't, captivated by dinosaurs. And so to have one potentially alive on Earth at the same time I was like the biggest thing ever. And then as I continued reading through this book, then I saw a picture of Patty, and that was it. That for me was even bigger than Nessie. Like I think the intrigue with the Sasquatch specifically is because it's so similar to us. And the idea that we may have this relative out there that has remained undiscovered mostly, that exists in these, places, remote and not so remote in some cases, but has the ability to remain so hidden, and is so perfectly fit for that. That I think the fact that it's so closely like us is really why it's such a big deal to a lot of people. That mystery, you want to connect with people. That's part of human nature, and then we have this love of animals. A lot of us do. So you bring both of those things together, and it creates this crazy, like, oh my God! So it's an animal, and it's like us. Like, it's the coolest thing ever. That's how I got started. It was just with a book, man.
Wow.
It shows you just what a little bit of interest can do. We're just one of those, that little spark as a child, and what it can kind of progress onto, and it can kind of shape your life, can't you? That little bit of inspiration can shape your life to come.
Absolutely. I mean, I would have never thought, at 43 years old, that I would be doing this like I am now. It's such a it's spending so much time doing it, out in the woods as much as I possibly can, and then doing this show where I talk to people like you guys and other researchers, authors, enthusiasts, hobbyists, and eyewitnesses. Like it's such a passion. And I think this isn't one of those things where you get into and you just kind of like it. You can't do that with this. This is something that you truly have to have a passion for. And most of us are almost to the point of like being zealots about it. You know what I mean? Like, we're kind of crazy. There's not a lot of people out there that if you ask them, hey, would you go out in the woods in your free time all the time looking for an upright, hair-covered biped that could be 8 to 10 feet tall and weigh in excess of 1,000 pounds, just for fun? Most people will go, no. Who the hell would do that?
You do have a massive community, don't you? I mean, and Daniel getting into this community over the last kind of couple of, well, I don't even know if it was a couple of years. Daniel, was it a year
6 months?
Okay, okay, 6 months. So but seeing that community come together, you are a family. But like they say, the best families are just a little bit crazy. So
yes.
We'll look out for each other, which is fantastic. You're always going to get some people that maybe not on the same track as everyone, but everyone seems to be 100% genuine and kind of looks out for each other. And this is I know Daniel getting involved in it was, for us was a little bit scary to begin with, but the amount of people like yourself and Mike and Amy and Jeffrey Meldrum and people like that have really taken them under his wing and shown them the right way of doing things, and I appreciate that, so I thank you for that.
Oh, of course, man. That's one of the things that was so amazing to me, right? Is yes, like there's a lot of drama in this community. I can't deny that there is. I think a lot of that comes from the passion that people have, right? When you're so passionate about something, it's easy for people to butt heads, right?
Yeah.
This person believes this and this person believes this, and so they're part of two different camps, which I think is kind of silly at times, but that's where the passion comes in. It's like they're so in love with the topic that when something is outside of their ideas, theories, and whatever evidence they may have collected, it sometimes people get upset, and not that it should be that way, but it happens. But on the flip side of that, I have found some of the greatest people, and this is no, like, I'm not blowing smoke here. I mean this truly. I have found some of the greatest people that have come into my life from this topic. You mentioned a couple. I mean, Mike Ann is one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet in your life. The guy is a gem of a human being. He's just top notch. He's wonderful. He's somebody that I look up to. There's somebody in the chat right now, Dewey. He's my co-host. He's been doing this for 40 or 50 years. Like, he's got 10 or 12 books that he's authored. He's working on finishing a documentary with Small Town Monsters right now. Just released a book about a pilot from the U.S. military that crashed his plane chasing what reportedly was a UFO back in like the 30s. Thomas Mantell Jr. And this was kind of a story that was swept under the rug for the most part. But here's a guy who's so passionate about this. He wants this man to get his just due and make sure that he's remembered as an American hero, because that's what he did. Chasing this thing is no different than if he chased down an enemy plane to keep us safe. It's the same thing. But it just, these are great people who I've met along the way. And Daniel's so fortunate. I have to say this. He's so fortunate that he met the right people at the right time, because he could have met other people who may have not had his best interests at heart.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And this is from a parent point of view. Obviously, our main thing has been a safeguarding, kind of making sure everything's okay. And and obviously everything we do is, he runs, pretty much everything he does, he runs past us first. If not us, his nan. But it's people like yourself and, like I said, and Mike and Amy and these other people that have really inspired him. And Daniel's very much like a magpie. He would take bits and pieces from each person, and he'll put to form his own kind of opinion and stuff. And staying out of that drama is, a key thing for that, I think. And keeping your eye on your focus and on the prize as such, when your prize is information, and developing his own education through that. And yeah, like I said, the family side, the community side amazes me when it comes to that. But so your podcast, how long has your podcast been going?
A little over a year. I started the podcast last October, I think it was. It may have been like the end of September, early October. So yeah, a little
just
over a year.
Before you interviewed me.
So no, you were on this year. So I started literally a year basically before you came on. So you came on this October. I started the previous October of 2022.
Oh, okay. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, going on to kind of your podcast, then, could you tell us some of the stories that you've encountered on your podcast?
Oh man. So like when I first started the show, when you first start anything, especially something like this, you don't know anybody. You're essentially a nobody, right? And I hate to use that word, but nobody knows who you are. There's always that trepidation when you want to interview people who have a name in this community, who people like Ron Moorhead, let's say, somebody who I looked up to for so long. And I just was like, you know what? Like, I got nothing to lose, right? I'm gonna go into this thing, with all I got, and I'm gonna go for the people that I want to talk to. The worst they can say is no. And so I just did that. I did as much research as I could to find out how to contact these people. The few people that I knew, I would ask, like, hey, do you know anybody who knows so-and-so? Or do you know how I can get in contact with this person and this person? And then started that way. And I was very fortunate to be able to talk to some of these people that I look up to so much, like Ron, Doug Hychek, my buddy Jay Bachochin, who's done a couple documentaries, who's a great researcher and a wonderful guy, and many others. The stories, man, some of the most amazing encounters I've ever heard in my life. I think like Doug talks about his encounters with a giant winged humanoid. I don't know if you've ever heard him tell this story.
Yeah.
That's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. And if I heard it from anybody else, I would say you're nuts. But because it's Doug, and here's a guy who is so incredibly smart. I mean, like almost genius level smart, right? And so accomplished. There's nobody else on the planet Earth that can say that they were the one to discover the giant squid. Doug did that. Doug, right? I mean, that is an incredible thing. Only he can say that he filmed a giant squid in its natural habitat when other scientists were saying, no, they don't exist. Doug was like, yeah, hold my beer. Like, yeah, it's exactly what it was. He was on a boat and he was just like,
that's crazy. That's
yeah. And so, you hear stories like that, like, oh, I filmed a giant squid for the first time ever. Oh, I saw this 8 foot tall, 8 foot winged humanoid fly over the car. My wife was with me as we're driving down a highway. And I'm like, what, then he discussed how when he went to Alaska, they got off the helicopter. I think they flew in a helicopter. They landed somewhere. And as they were walking along, they instantly see these giant tracks. Instantly, like 18 or 20-inch tracks. And they kind of walked off into the trees. And, they had this giant span in between them. And he followed them. And then, they were having activity there. There's just so many. Like, I don't even know where to start. And I don't know if you want me to tell like somebody else's whole story, but like there's so much.
I mean, you don't need to tell someone else's story, but I mean, yeah.
So we spoke to Doug. We spoke to Doug few months ago, I think.
Very fascinating guy.
Yeah.
Oh, he's the most interesting man alive, I think. I literally tell people all the time, I'm like, he could talk about paint drying and make it interesting. He really could. We had a discussion one night on the show. It was supposed to be about this, and it was raining outside where he was, and his son was talking about how, how you can smell rain. It has that certain smell to it. Doug started talking about that and the smell of rain and why it smells to us, and how this, over evolution created this reason for us to be able to smell it, and yada yada. And it was like, if anybody else ever talked about that, I would have been going, but I was so just stuck listening, going, oh my God, this is so interesting. But that's just Doug. Like he's just so smart and so charismatic and so kind. Anytime he tells a story, I'm in. I don't care what it's about. I'm in.
So we talk about other people's stories, but in your research since the boy, then all the way through, what's your story? What's your kind of interactions?
I've had some strange stuff happen. So I'll talk about most of the recent stuff, because I think for me,
we've opened a massive rabbit hole here, haven't we?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
The recent stuff is the most important to, I think, in my story, because it's the stuff that's happened over the last year or so, a couple of years, since I've really started pressing hard into the investigation side of things. So I was going to a local state forest to do my investigations here in Connecticut. And for most people, when they think of Connecticut, they don't think of Sasquatch. It's just not it's not a place that you hear. It's not like Northern California, Washington, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Florida. Like, these are places that people hear about Sasquatch all the time. People don't talk about it here. Doesn't mean it's not here, though. it's just because the culture in this state is different. Connecticut as a state is, I think it's considered, has the highest income of any state in the union, I think. So there's a lot of very like rich people, and that's not trust me, I promise you, it's not everybody in the state, but there's a good portion of the state that has a lot of money. The other end, really, and when you have that kind of culture, people aren't going to talk about something like this because they're so caught up with keeping up with the Joneses. Everybody wants to be as good as the next family and the next person and yada yada. And so even if people, I think, have an experience here, they're so less likely to speak about it, and only in these little tiny pockets of this state where you might get people to speak about it. And even those pockets are difficult because while they're not rich, they're very small towns, farmers and just people who keep to themselves. So it's difficult to get the evidence and the communication and the stories that most other places get. But so I start going to the state forest and doing these investigations. And for a while I was getting nothing. I thought this is a wash. I'm not getting anything here. Maybe I'll move on. Almost as soon as I started getting down on this place, I had my first interaction there. I was out one day. And I always went live. Every time I was there, I went live. Couple reasons. I do that because I think, for me as a lover of this subject, if I'm watching and somebody's like, I'm going to do an investigation looking at, into Bigfoot to see if I can find any evidence, I'm going to bring you along. I'm going to be excited. I want to watch. So I figure there's got to be other people out there that are going to want to watch. It gives me people to interact with, which is also makes it fun. It's like having somebody with you because I'm always by myself. Well, not always, but 95% of the time I'm alone. And also, if I'm live and something happens, nobody can say it didn't happen. Nobody can say it was faked, it was hoaxed, it either happens or it doesn't. No in between. And so I'm out there, and I decided I was just going to sit down. I kind of just had this feeling, like there was this weird feeling came over me that like somebody was watching me. And I sat down on this log, and funny enough, I started singing, right? I'm no Johnny Mathis. I'm not Elvis. I don't have the greatest voice in the world. But I started singing just to try something different. And as I start singing, I start hearing this melodic whistling coming from behind me every so often. Mind you, it's winter. There are not many birds out. The ones that are out are like the woodpeckers, a couple crows. Not many songbirds are out chirping. It wasn't just winter either. It was cold. Like it was probably 14 degrees outside. Like it was not a decent day. It was a cold day, and it had just started snowing. So I'm listening to these whistles, and I'm in my head. I'm going, this doesn't sound like birds. And people in the chat are going, do you hear the whistle? And yeah, I hear the whistle. I hear the whistle. And it continues over and over. And then as this whistle's happening over here, I'm getting knocks from the opposite direction, and not very far away, maybe 100 yards, somewhere around there. So I stand up and I start panning the camera around and don't see anything. And I start whistling myself. And as I would whistle, after a few minutes, that whistle something would almost try to mimic it, is what it seemed like.
No way.
I swear to God, I got chills right now. It was very, very similar to what I would do. And this went on. I did this for probably over an hour, like whistling, getting reaction, getting knocks. hearing movement in the bushes from 3 different sides of me. And so that was my real first like interaction with anything that I believe probably were Sasquatch. I mean, there was no people out there. I can tell you that right now.
We said about the community, and sometimes the community is a little bit crazy. Yeah, you stayed there for an hour after this thing's whistling at you.
Yeah.
I'm out. I'll be
You'll be long gone.
I'll be gone. Yeah.
Oh,
I wouldn't have gone there by myself in the first place. So yeah, that must have been insane.
So, admittedly, Craig, I have a fear when I'm out there alone. I'm scared. I can't even lie. Like, I can't pretend I'm not scared. I'm scared. You go out looking for something that is, it's a giant from all descriptions. And depending on who you talk to, some of these things are very nice and kind, and then some of these things are baby snatcher cannibals who will kill anything to get in their way. So you don't know. We don't know for sure because no one's had one to study. So it's really all a guessing game. So yeah, I'm nervous, especially alone.
So whatever this kind of was, so obviously the thing to pop out is Bigfoot. So you go, it sounds to me there wasn't just one creature there.
No, definitely not.
Because if you've got sounds coming through him 3 different ways, and you've got knocks and
footsteps, whistling,
that doesn't happen. That doesn't. Not animal like that could do that. No,
and it being the first time that I had this interaction, your senses are so heightened. Your adrenaline's going, your hair's standing on end, your head's doing this, it's on a swivel because you're hearing the whistles here, you're hearing these knocks here, you're hearing what sounds like footsteps and bushes rustling from behind you.
I'm gone. I'll be out.
It's very nerve-wracking, but at the same time, if you're listening to these whistles, to me, there was a part of me that when you hear them, I'm thinking in my head, like, and getting a feeling like there's nothing about this interaction that seems anything but curious. That's just what it seemed. I like to be mimicking the whistles that I was trying to in these melodic ways. I don't see any angry, aggressive animal doing that. I just don't. I would imagine they would just be as quiet as they could be, sneak in, and then snatch me up, and I'm gone. And that was not what was happening. Whatever it was clearly making noise on purpose. And even when there was like the footsteps and the rustling in the bushes, it was like if I got too trained on that area over there, that's when this area would start to heat up. So then you're doing this, and then you're focused on that area. And then if you get too focused on that area starts to heat up. It's almost tactical so that they can do what they need to do, distract you in case one of them needs to move or reposition. That's what it felt like. It was like this tactical, they were doing this purposely so that they could keep their positions and you could never get too trained on them.
Is that a known? Is that sorry, Daniel? Is that a known kind of technique that they use? Do they travel in packs for a start? I mean, I don't know. I'm new to this whole world, but
you don't know? I mean, I can't say. You'll never ever hear me say like yes, 100% anything because I don't know. Unless I was to be able to document, on film, seeing a pack of these creatures or beings over and over, then I would be able to say, yes, from this data, they travel in packs. If you go off of historical references from people, then yes, where there's one, there's more. There's rarely ever just one. That's what it seems like. anyway. So
Okay.
made sense. I mean, it fit the bill, you know.
And you hear it so many times, and you hear it so many kind of they like to whistle, they like to, and it's a lot about the kind of the communication side. Like you've got they do a lot of when it comes out inside in sightings, you've got whistles, wood knocks, tree structures. I don't put all my hope into tree structures because there's a lot that you need to kind of figure out about them. But
Sure.
whistling, copping, whistles, nah, that can't be anything else. That you can, and I'm not saying it is, but kind of wood knots can kind of be trees creaking or, but whistling, no. You
Yeah,
can't you can't do that. Yeah.
unless you got parrots around you or something, you know, I don't, there's not many birds out there that will mimic these melodic tones that, you know, I'm whistling, and they don't, and birds whistle differently than humans do. You know, I mean, we could kind of mimic them, but they don't whistle like us. It's a different tone altogether. And this was different too. So that was there. I know we don't have all day, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because I think this is probably the most exciting stuff that's happened. So I investigate there now for months, and I have a couple of things happen after this. I found a potential two tracks that were like 14 and a half inches long, going down one of the horse trails. So, you know, I cataloged those. Had another interaction that was questionable, couple knocks, and then another weird, like, I don't know, it was like a weird howl. Hard to describe. Of course, at that time I had no recorder, so I couldn't even record it. My phone didn't pick it up. People heard it during the live, but the phone didn't pick it up. So anyway, during this time, I had the Facebook group that was going, and a gentleman reaches out to me and he says, I have a coworker who has stuff going on on his property that's been going on there for years, on and off. And for all these years, he continued to write it off as like, it's got to be kids, or it's got to be somebody in the woods, and they're just messing with me. And I asked him for the details, and the details were, he lives in this town, this small town, you know, up on the border of Northeast Connecticut and Massachusetts. And he's got a large parcel of land. It's like almost 50 acres. And the land is surrounded by both state forest and then protected wildlife management land. And there's tens of thousands of acres of that surround his property. And the nearest neighbors on both sides, one was a mile and a half that way, one was a mile that way. And as I'm asking these questions and finally talk to the gentleman who owns the property, it's an older gentleman. He's like in his early 70s, mind you. He's the land was farmland that he inherited. It was first his great-grandfather's, his grandfather's, and then his grandfather passed it on to him. So it's been in the family for a long time. Initially, there was 168 acres of land. As the farm died, the farm business died, they sold off parts of this land to the state. And then, you know, I think one part went to the neighbor, you know, down the road but their land butts up to his. And just, you know, just to get some more money. And so that's kind of what dwindled his property rights, but obviously still all wooded and protected area behind there. So I'm asking questions like, well, you know, your neighbors are a mile and a half away. Do they have children? And he's like, no, their children have been grown and moved out for years. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, for the state forest, right? Protected land. You own 50 acres that goes into that forest of private land where there's no trespassing signs and, you know, like signs that say you're a gun owner. who's coming through your woods and messing with stuff in your yard? His driveway is a long driveway. It kind of goes up and it's all wooded. So you drive through the woods, you make a big, wide, sweeping right-hand turn, and then you go up to the house, and the house is set back to the right on the property. Big, big yard, a couple outbuildings right along the wood line near behind the house. And then there's a trail where he used his ATV to get rid of shrubs and stuff and whatever and bring it out into the woods. There's a trail that goes out into the woods. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, what kids are doing this? If there's no kids around, like, just sounds weird to me. And as I'm talking to him and he's telling me the things that are happening, he's having things go missing, sometimes off the back deck, sometimes, off the picnic table in the back. Sometimes his tools will be missing from he'll leave something out or whatever, and that'll go missing. And then these things will end up coming back like a month, 2 months, 3 months later, and they'll be put back in a different area. Then he's got crazy noises that he's hearing in these woods, what he described as like Jurassic Park noises is what he said. Screams and howls that he said sounded like Jurassic Park. Something slapped his house in the middle of the night multiple times over the course of these years, woke him up. He'd come running outside, with his gun and never see anything. Once or twice, he said he caught a shadow, and that was it. And so I'm putting all this together, and the guy who contacted me was his coworker. And the only reason that he knew about me was because his wife was a part of the group, but she's into the Bigfoot thing. And she said to him, "It sounds like Bigfoot." And so it took convincing to get the husband of the wife, who was this gentleman's coworker, to say to the gentleman who owns the property, "I think you have Bigfoot on your property," and then to contact me. How this all happened was crazy. So I talked to the gentleman who owns the property. He tells me all this stuff. I tell him what I do. I said, I'm really interested to come out and just check it out. I said, I won't bring a camera. I won't bring anything. If you're not okay with it, I want to come check it out. And if it's what I think it is, I might be able to help you. If you want this stuff to stop, I might be able to tell you how to stop it. He was very apprehensive, told me he'd have to think about it, talk to his wife, and he would give me a call back. So a little while goes by. Finally, he calls me back. And he says, "I think it's time to get you up here." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "I went out to move some stuff out of the yard into the woods," he said. "And on the trail going into the woods, there's these very large footprints, bare footprints." He said, "This is the first time I've ever seen any footprints at all." He goes, "I haven't really looked for them." He said, "But, it's strange that they're there now." He said, "I think you should come up." I said, I'll be up there tomorrow. Well, the day before it had rained, so the ground is soft, and that's why the footprints were able to be left. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been left. The soil here in Connecticut and Massachusetts, we have so much rock that to get a good print is very difficult. But so this was the perfect storm, no pun intended. But it was going to rain again that night. And I knew if it rained like it was going to wash those footprints away. And I said, "Can you possibly please cover them? I don't know how, but can you cover them?" And this gentleman went out and staked a tarp in the ground to cover these prints, some of them. Thank God he did. So I go up the very next day, and sure enough, there are these clear 5-toed 17-inch footprints walking off into the woods. And there's a 51-inch stride in between them, or 52. I couldn't jump it. I was trying to jump it. Obviously, I'm a little older now. I'm not as agile as I once was, but I couldn't do it. I was like, I knew instantly. I didn't have to know anything else. Once I saw the prints, I said, "Yeah, this is exactly what's going on here." So he allowed me to investigate this place over the course of like a few months, and I would go up, and almost immediately we had stuff happening. One day we were out and we got hit with very small rocks from behind, both of us, in our backs over and over. Then as it's the same story, as we're getting hit with rocks and we start focusing on that area, something very large moves from our 2 o'clock through the woods. We catch a very, very, very quick glimpse, and that's it. Like it was like a lightning flash. Just as we turn, we both say we saw something, just like so quick, and then we don't see anything. And you know, this kind of went on and on with these things happening. Heavy bipedal footsteps. He would have stuff happen at night. So what happened was I took my audio recorder and I left it in a dead stump out in the area closest to where he was continuously hearing these crazy Jurassic Park noises. And I left some gifts. I left tobacco, like natural tobacco leaf. I left seashells. I left some crystals, and I'm just trying anything at this point, right? And so I go back. Gosh, I forget if it was. I think it was a week later. Yeah, I think it was the next weekend. So I go back the next weekend to collect the recorder, and the recorder recorded for. I think it was 49 hours straight. And so I documented the time that I set it out so that I knew hour by hour what time it was if there was any noises. And the first noises that came on that recorder were right around 2 a.m., right before 2 a.m. And what you heard was bushes kind of shaking and sticks breaking off in the distance. And slowly this is getting closer and closer to where I left the recorder. The sticks are breaking, they're louder, the footsteps are heavy, like thump, like thump, thump, thump. And the sticks that are breaking underneath these feet, they're not little tiny sticks. These sticks, they're like crack, snap. It sounds like there's something else also off in the distance that might potentially be breaking limbs on its own. And then these footsteps come in. There's two extremely clear, very loud knocks from behind where these footsteps are. The footsteps are very close to the recorder at this point. These knocks came from a little bit off in the distance. All of a sudden, something picks the recorder up. And you hear it messing with the recorder, kind of fingernail noises almost tapping on it. And then heavy, heavy breathing, what sounds like a grunt. And then the recorder falls to the ground. You hear it, boom, boom, like hit the ground. And then this thing walks off. And that was the end of that, right? You kind of hear it off in the distance for a little while. You also hear noises kind of coming from the other side where the knocks were, but it was faint. You could still hear it. And then gosh, I forget what time now. I'd have to go back and watch the video, but it was like around 3 something is when I recorded these 3 screams that I have never heard in my life. They are, for all intents and purposes, like Jurassic Park. These were extremely loud. They were piercing. They were scary. And they were coming from the exact direction where this gentleman said he would hear this stuff happen.
That's mad.
Mind you, where this stuff was happening, there's a very, very deep swamp that's like very difficult to penetrate. If I went in that swamp, it'd be up to my face. So you're not going to walk through it with waders. It's very long and very wide, and so it's not easy to get around. And then all the brush between, like in front of it, is so thick in the summertime. I mean, like prickers, briars, like it's just so thick. You could take a machete in there, and it would take you days to get through this stuff. So tactically, where this is coming from would be the perfect place for something like this to hide, because me and you we're not getting through there very easily. And if we try to get through there, they're going to know we're coming far before we ever get there. So I record all this. Then I go back. Stuff kind of quiets down. His family comes in for Father's Day, which is his son, daughter-in-law, and then some younger children. And I was like, ooh, females and kids, like, they're going to be there. And surprisingly, he said he didn't have anything go on, not that he knew of. Well, so I was shocked because I was like, man, normally like kids and females, they want to see this and they want to be around. But no, he said, no, nothing really happened. Then he calls me and he says, something left 2 dead birds on my back porch. And he sent me a picture, and it was two birds. I don't know what kind of birds they are. I'm not a bird guy, but they were presented. I mean, like a present. They didn't even look like they were harmed. Like there was no visible injuries, no nothing. They looked like they had just passed from natural causes. Like, I don't know. It's very hard to explain. But they were presented, like laid on the porch, very nice, very neat. And you could tell like something put these things there because they were right up like next to each other, almost like they were like hugging. It's very strange. And so of course I'm like, well, that's weird. So I went back up, and as I'm up there, he had a tree that was on the side of the trail. It was an old tree that had been down for years, and it was like 30 or 40 feet long. It was about, I don't know, that big around maybe. And that tree all of a sudden was across the trail. Now, he didn't move it. I didn't move it. His wife surely didn't move it. So what the heck moved it? I mean, only one answer to me at that point. So I'm investigating. We moved the tree back. I'm investigating out there. And this is where things kind of get weird.
What hasn't been weird so far?
No, it gets so if this is why I want to tell you this, because mind you, I'm not a big believer in a lot of the woo stuff. Like, I don't believe that these guys are jumping in and out of dimensions. I think that
okay, I see.
Yeah, I think that they are just a perfect evolutionary specimen.
Yeah.
They are what evolution is supposed to do. They were created to live in these environments so perfectly, and they're intelligent. And whatever their camouflage does, I don't know if it's the hair, if it's the skin, if it's the greasy stuff that they have on the skin, but it gives them such an advantage to be able to hide and blend in so perfectly.
My kind of thing, just to add on that, is kind of I've been kind of speaking about this a lot, where there's been a few reports where Bigfoot has been seen wearing a deer carcass or something, which is using their environment, where if you have like, if they put grass on themselves or something and they duck down in those ferns, they will be invisible.
Yeah, of course.
You will not be able to see them, which is why I go, if you change the word from cloaking to camouflaging, that makes much more sense.
Yeah, so that's where I land on this stuff. But one of the things that I started to find out, though, is that a lot of this weird stuff, the Bigfoot, the paranormal, the UFOs, it kind of overlaps. Like in these places that people go to look for this stuff, they're all very similar. People go to look for paranormal in dark places and scary places in the woods and in these abandoned houses and homes, and people go looking for UFOs out in these big fields or in the mountains or in the woods. We go looking for Bigfoot in the woods, and so these things kind of overlap at times. So I go out and I'm doing my normal thing, and one day I just all of a sudden felt very ill, and it was in a way I had never felt before. I actually got very nervous because I felt like I was going to pass out. My legs felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds and made of jello. I couldn't put a clear thought together at all. Like I knew in my head like something's wrong, but I couldn't even think fast enough to know to get out of there instantly, if that makes sense. Everything was very slowed down. I felt nauseous, dizzy, tired. And then finally I was like, dragging myself out of those woods. And I mean it, like I was dragging. I got out of there. I put all my stuff down. I got in the car and I just left. About 10 minutes after I left, I felt fine. I thought, well, that was weird. Like, just kind of chalked it up to something just being off that day or whatever. So I go back and do this, go back to the property and keep investigating. And it happens like 3 or 4 more times. And every time it's the same thing, comes out of nowhere. It's very intense. Then when I leave, I feel fine after about 10 or 15 minutes. So I start talking to people and I'm like, what? Is there some potential correlation here? And I find out, funny enough, where I'm investigating is about 5 minutes. Well, not 5 minutes, but it's very close to. Have you ever heard of The Conjuring? Do you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't.
The Conjuring house is about 5 or 7 minutes down the road. Okay. I didn't know this. I didn't know this when I started this. All that land in that area there were violent bloody battles and terrible, terrible things happened there.
No, I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah. I don't do the paranormal thing. I don't, because like you just
No.
don't know what you're getting when you go fishing for that stuff. And so I'm like, man, maybe something else is going on here. Because again, I don't think like at the time I didn't believe that Bigfoots could potentially use infrasound to hurt you. Now I might believe that a little more. But again, still up in the air. So that starts happening. So I bail. I don't go back for a little while. I'm like, I'm done. Like it's not worth it. Like I'm by myself. If I go out there and something happens, nobody's there to help me. This 70-year-old man is not going to be able to drag me out of there. He's probably not going to be able to get to me where I'm going. Right. And also the other part of this is I have no service in that area. None. No phone service. I don't have Wi-Fi. I can't go live. I can't, nothing. It's a dead zone, completely dead. I was also having battery drainage issues. I'd go out there, 98% battery, and within 4 minutes, flatlined, like completely dead, wouldn't turn back on. So all these strange things, I'm telling you, this is why I say this stuff gets weirder and weirder the more you investigate and the more places you go, because I just think things start to overlap. So I take a lot of time off and I finally decide I'm going to go back. It's been months and I go back. I start pushing out to that northeast corner of the property where, is closest to the swamp and closest to whatever's beyond the swamp, where all the noises are heard. And I'm trying to, like, every time I went, I was trying to push further and further to get as close as I could. And I'm out there and I thought I caught something out the corner of my eye, but what happens is I think you start to, like, especially for me, I'm very objective about this stuff. So if I don't see anything clearly, then I go, it must have been my eyes playing tricks on me, right? And then I just kind of discard it. And also I think it's kind of like a defense mechanism, right? So if I tell myself that nothing was there, then I'm not as nervous. So I discard this and I start focusing back over here. All of a sudden, I get this awful smell. And people talk about the smell of these Sasquatch. I've never smelled anything. Never, not once. This time I get this awful smell and it punches me in the face. It's like, wham. And it smelled like an outhouse, like a porta potty that had been outside in the sun on a summer day for hours, mixed with like stale water, if that makes sense. And it was terrible smell. And I hear this noise directly in front of me, about 60 yards away, and it sounded like a like a like a like kind of like that, almost like almost mixed between that and like when a horse does the like that thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it sounded like. I'm like, what the hell was that? That was strange. I knew I heard this. This was not something I could write off. So I'm fumbling around with gear, trying to get gear out. I wanted to get my tri-field meter out because, again, I was having all these weird things happen. So I was trying to measure EMF levels there. As I'm going in my bag and doing this, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the bushes erupt with noise, and something charges at me. And I'm talking like a bullet train. All I hear is cracking, snapping, shaking leaves. Do 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 do. Like, yeah, as this thing's running towards me, I start fumbling backwards. I always keep a sidearm with me, always. I've never once pulled that gun out. Never. Not even like felt like I was going to. I reached in and was grabbing that gun and was loading it before it was even coming out of my bag, like putting one in the chamber, because I don't even keep a bullet in the chamber because, like, people talk about how smart these things are and how spiritual they are, and I never wanted to give the impression that I was out there to harm anything if they had some kind of ability, right? People will say, "Oh, you're stupid for not keeping it like one chambered," but that's just me. And so I'm chambering it. And as I'm doing that, I'm shaking, I'm backpedaling, I'm almost falling over. And whatever it is stops, like just stopped. And I that was it. I was gone. I didn't stick around. I didn't try to take a picture. I was gone. It scared me more than anything I've experienced. And again, I don't know. It could have been a bear. There's bear in this area. There's a good amount. And it was around the time when there would have been cubs. So might have been a mom bear. They stink. I don't know if they smell like a porta potty, but they stink. And so I couldn't tell you what it was, but I could tell you whatever it was big. It was fast, and that was it. And yep, and that was it. I was gone, man. I was gone.
Wow.
And that was the last. I went back one other time after that, and I haven't been back since. And people are like, "You had crazy activity. Why are you not going back there?" I'm like, "Because I'm alone."
Yeah.
You don't understand what it's like.
That's just the most fascinating, awesome story. It was like I was watching a film. That was insane.
Yeah, honestly, and I will say, just before we go on to that whole story and kind of ask questions, I find that really weird that it just stopped.
Just dead. I mean, like
Just
instantly. It wasn't even like it slowed down. It just stopped.
Just stopped. That's weird. I don't that plays with my mind. I don't like that. That is probably the most amazing Bigfoot story I've heard in the whole world of Bigfoot that within the last 6 months. When I started this podcast in June,
I'm not saying it's Bigfoot.
No, it's not. Yeah,
I don't know. All I'm saying is there was prints. There were things up there that led me to believe that there was Bigfoot activity, and then this thing happened. So you, in your mind, you think whatever you think, but I can't say for sure. I just can't.
That audio recording that you did, do you have that anywhere that people can?
Oh yeah, it's on my channel.
So it's on your channel, right? Well, that's good. I don't know, Daniel, if you can put a link to that channel in the notes or anything like that for people that, it'd be good, because you have to do it now, but or maybe on the site, because I'm sure people will want to go and have a listen to that if they haven't heard that before.
Yeah, so it's a live stream, because what happened was I go pick up the recorder and I video the footprints. Oh, that's the other thing. There were footprints there, like 2 trackways in that area where the recorder was when I went to pick it up. So I forgot to say that. So I video the footprints as I'm going to pick the recorder up. I video that the gifts were gone. And then when I get home and listen to the recorder, that's when I was shocked out of my mind, listening to it. And then I played it on a live stream like a day later or two later. I played all of the audio right into the microphone for everyone to hear. And so yeah, it was like last oh man, it was like sometime around like between May and June of last year, I believe. Sometime. It'll say in the title like Bigfoot evidence from the property or audio evidence from property. Yeah.
Just to everyone in the comments and everyone watching on Facebook, I've just posted Carl's YouTube channel, so you guys can go and have a look there. But Carl, that is an amazing story, and I will say, it's really hard for when you think it's Bigfoot, and I've done this myself. It's really hard not to say it, and
Oh yeah, very difficult.
I've had to even with my DNA, I've had to say no idea. I've had to, and to this day, I still haven't. And I've got to say, it's getting harder and harder as we keep going.
But you know what that does though is as hard as it is, and it's very difficult because you get excited, right? If you love this, you get excited. You want to be like, yes, I had Bigfoot experiences. I had, these things happen. It was Bigfoot. But by being objective and by being careful with these things, your reputation it stays intact. People who jump the gun and they're like instantly like, oh my God, this is Bigfoot, that's Bigfoot, this is Bigfoot, that's Bigfoot, without having anything to back it up, that's kind of when things get a little mucky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're better to err on the side of caution with all this stuff, because at the end of the day, unless somebody, even if you film one, like the problem is like you can film something that looks just like a Bigfoot, it could be clear, but because we don't have a body, you can't say even that's a Bigfoot. Do you know what I'm saying? Like this is the conundrum.
There will always be people who try and rip it apart, and
yes,
and there's so yeah, no, I totally get that, and that's actually really, really good advice for Daniel. So I really appreciate that, Carl.
Yeah, don't be married to it. That's what I tell everybody. Like, I love this stuff. I love it. But the second that you get emotionally married to it, is the second that you start to, I see it happen to people all the time, is they'll say, no, this is definitely Bigfoot, and you can't tell me otherwise. And that's when people start butting heads, and they, and things happen that aren't so good. So I always tell people, like, remain as objective as you possibly can about this stuff. That's like number one. Yeah, it's tough though. I get it. It's tough.
Thanks, mate.
It's that, and even now that story's going round my head. I have a headache now because I was focusing so well on that. And yeah, it's the most interesting story, and I'm with Dad. It was like listening kind of just a film, and so Carl, that was incredible. And I do want to say, I want to thank you so much for kind of being on with us, because it's been incredible.
Thank you, man. I enjoy. Listen, I love this stuff. I love it. So anytime I get a chance to discuss it, talk about it, share this stuff, it's fun for me.
And it sounds like you've got so much. It sounds like you've got so much more to give as well. So we'd love to have you back on another time, if that's all right, to go into other stuff and kind of go that way.
Oh yeah, I've got plans in the next year that like we're kind of branching out, and trying to do some other things. I know Alex Petikoff. He's a very good friend of mine. My buddy Mike Lucci, who's part of the This Week in Bigfoot crew. And then my buddy Brian, who has a channel called Brian and Chewy Go Hiking. That's kind of our group, us four. We're all kind of from the New England area, and we focus on this area, but we're doing some other things this year. We're going to start doing UFO stuff, maybe paranormal stuff. I might bow out of most of that, but maybe.
Don't
But we
go down that drain.
yeah, I don't know if I
stay down my drain, Carl.
yeah, I'm not sure if I'm tough enough for that, but like we do have plans to go and do. We have a long-term investigation plan in 2 different areas that we're going for the whole year. We're going to leave recorders, we're going to leave cameras, we're going to go back periodically, check them, do some videoing and see what we catch, and then at the end of the year, hopefully put out a film. So.
Oh, it'll be amazing. Yeah, we try and catch up with that.
Yeah.
So apart from obviously Daniel's put your link into the show, is there anywhere else that people can follow you? And
you could. I do have a group of the same name on Facebook. It's the Encrypted Connections Facebook group. You can look us up there. And then
Carl, very briefly,
yes.
could you send in my email? Because obviously,
yes, absolutely, yeah. Dewey, I'll send him your email. Yep.
Yeah.
Dewey's another guy. Listen, if you want to have a guy on your show he's done this for 40 or 50 years, man. Like I'm a baby compared to what this guy knows and what he's seen and done, and he's the sweetest guy on the planet, no lie.
So yeah, we'd love to get him on as well, and then possibly maybe one with the 4 of us to have a bit.
That would be wonderful.
It'd be a bit of fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be great.
So Carl, I've shared kind of your podcast and chat, as Dad just said. And yeah, mate, it's been incredible. And I want to say to all our viewers, we had 13 at one point, so we've been going up and down. Thank you so much, Carl.
Thank you guys, really, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks. And thank you so much to all the viewers there that's watched us or this on record. And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe Carl's channel, and don't forget to like and subscribe the Mythical Legends podcast. Thank you so much, guys. Keep searching and stay mythical.
Thank you for listening to the Mythical Legends podcast. For more information, check out our Facebook group. The truth is out there.